On this episode of Still Loading, it's Halloween for Valentine's Day. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today on the show, a first-time guest and a second ever game developer I've ever had on the show. Today, I have Peter Lazarski on the show with me, and we are going to talk about a game that he made a couple years ago, but now, just recently, as of today's recording, it's out today on the Switch. You're going to be hearing this 2 days later, but it is called Halloween Forever, and I have the designer and developer here, Peter Lazarski. Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I was telling you off mic, this was very last minute because I kind of got the review code a little bit beforehand, played through it, and really liked it. I'm like, well, I want to be able to, instead of just me kind of vamping about what I like, my thoughts about different levels or the music or the art, I figured why not just hear it straight from the developer's mouth. And so all my listeners can also get a better idea of what you thought about going into the game. So my first question for you, actually, before we even get to Halloween Forever, what first got you into video games? What are some of your earliest gaming memories?
Yeah, I don't know. I was, kind of like an aspiring console kid in the 90s. And, I would hang out with friends and they had I never had an NES. My first, game console that I had was a Game Boy. But even before that, my dad had like an early PC and we would mess around with shareware games and stuff, things like Commander Keen. And it was like funny because we'd have like bootleg shareware stuff too. I think like it was like the Aldo games that were sort of like a weird Mario Donkey Kong.
I don't know if I've ever heard of them before.
Yeah, it's something like Aldo's Adventure, and like they look really, really kind of special and weird. But yeah, so like a lot of Game Boy stuff, and then I remember getting like a Super Nintendo for Christmas, and that was like the bomb dropping, and yeah, I don't know. I think that it's also kind of the kind of stuff that I feel like I like to make kind of goes back into sort of this like nostalgia zone. Like I love doing pixel art. I love doing pixel games, platformers. It's just the kind of stuff that I've always liked playing myself. And so it's kind of like, well, I can make that too. And it, strikes this kind of familiar feel zone.
You picked a good time to kind of get into game design for 2D games, because there's been a renaissance in the indie space of these 2D platforming, 2D side-scrolling, or just 2D in general games. I mean, Shovel Knight is a good example. You could even make the argument Super Meat Boy, even though that's not necessarily like, that's a kind of more like a Flash-looking vibe, I would say.
Yeah.
But it still is. There's been a renaissance of these 2D side-scrolling games, so you picked a good time to jump into it. And Halloween Forever fits perfectly with that aesthetic. What got you into what first made you want to design games in general?
I think it was, so I was working for a while. It was mostly I came out of college. I went to school for graphic design, but also I was like kind of focusing sort of down this like illustration alley. Okay. And trying to figure out like what could I do to kind of combine those two. And for a bunch of years I was doing like design work, like illustration stuff, kind of getting to like some concept art things. And earlier on I was trying to find just a job that I could do working for a game studio. And for a couple years I was working, started around 2010 and ended I think it was 2019. I worked for this place in Rochester, New York called Workin' Man, and okay. It was nice. I got to do a lot of like client work like around games. We used to do a lot of things for Nickelodeon and some stuff for like Disney. It was mostly like web games and apps and that sort of stuff.
I mean,
And
I could picture all those big studios going for kind of that stuff because like the AAA and indie space is a little bit more time consuming for development, I would assume.
yeah, like most of the stuff that we would do would be, anywhere from like a 5-week project to like a 1 year thing, or
Okay.
something that we could put together in a few months, or then, like do some updates. But I think like getting to do that stuff for my work was great, but also it kind of started me like just kind of thinking and hoping like I want to be able to do some of the stuff for myself, but I'm an artist, like what can I do? And I would spend some time, collaborating with friends and trying to, like sitting down with some friends of mine who are developers too, and try to put something together. And, it's hard to coordinate, like a project like that when people are busy, and like you also don't really know what you're doing, so you're going to kind of spin your wheels a little bit.
I actually know that all too well, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, no, it's really common, and it's like pretty real, like people that are trying to do something and like put something together, and you're also trying to learn the process at the same time, and it can be sort of a challenge. So at least I feel grateful for, the time spent at Working Man, for having, some insight, or just some like, practice and pattern on sort of just the general producing of stuff. Like we would turn out content a lot, and that was great. And I tried picking up different, engines worth of programming, or, I tried picking up like JavaScript or something, like off and on every couple of years, and just nothing really stuck with me until I sat down with the Game Maker one day, and I think I was looking at some tutorials, and I thought, let me try this. And I think I'd been in sort of this headspace previously where I'd seen it before and thought, like this seems kind of like amateurish, or maybe it's not the best thing to, sit down and try and tackle, like doing an actual project that I might hope to release eventually.
Yeah.
But the more time I spent with it, and it really didn't take that long until, I was sitting down just kind of going through tutorials and just doing a lot of these just bite-size, feature demos. There's this guy, Sean Spalding, on YouTube, and I think he's probably still active. He even worked for Game Maker for a while, but he was putting out very just like bite-size a la carte kind of, platformer tutorial stuff. And that was really helpful, because I think a lot of the previous attempts I had made in trying to learn programming or any engine related stuff, it was all kind of like book learning, and I'd have, like a Unity book or this or that, and it just still didn't really stick super well to me. But actually being able to sit down and go through a video and just kind of, it felt more easy for me to kind of like blend my learning style with. And eventually just, I had that, and I also had like sort of like the old like some of the first sprites that I was doing just like a prototype or demo with were of Pumpkin Man, and like some of the characters from Halloween Forever, like really rudimentary old sprites. And I was just kind of setting up test rooms and things, and it just kind of cascaded after a while, where I was like, let me, I've got a guy moving around a room. Let me add like an enemy. Like, okay, cool. Let me, like, can I figure out how to make ladders? Like, it was very like bit by bit incremental, until I was far enough in, and, posting some stuff that I was doing and getting a lot of like positive feedback from people, like posting stuff on Instagram or whatever, that I was thinking like, do I like try to really like close the loop on this thing and like make something I can release? Like, let me try it, I guess, and and it was, I definitely spent, a bunch of time on it. I think it probably took like, I'm trying to think of like when I started. I think I started, I know we were talking like before we started talking about like dates and stuff, but
yeah.
If like Halloween Forever released on Steam in 2016, I think I started learning Game Maker, like sitting down at my desk, like I don't know what I'm doing, in 2014.
Oh,
and
wow.
So
that's pretty fast turnaround time then.
It would, I guess it's kind of, it feels like it is. It's like always like hard to kind of measure this stuff from, like where I'm sitting, like my perspective, because because also I think I like started, and then a couple months in, then I just like stopped touching it for like the entirety of like the winter of like 2014 to 15, just because. Just, I mean, like the winters up here get pretty nasty, and you think, oh, I'll be stuck inside and I'll get stuff done. But you kind of just also wind up getting into like seasonal depression or something. You're just like, I don't want to do anything. And, I mean, people probably definitely understand what that means right now just because of COVID. And it's just like everything is just like so much more extra now. Like and also you're like sick of hearing about it. Like everybody's sick of saying like unprecedented times.
It's the
or whatever.
new normal.
Yeah, it's just just crappy, and but you just wind up like taking breaks and hopefully kind of muddling through and doing what you can.
And I feel like everyone goes through those stretches. Like for me, when COVID started, and this isn't to go off on a COVID rant, like you said, you hear about it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like for me, what it kind of was like, and this is kind of even how I do chores in a sense. Like I am lazy to the point where it starts making me mad. Not that I'm lazy, but the chore isn't done.
Yeah.
And it's kind of something similar like that with I feel like for me with any creative endeavor, specifically with the podcast, like I'll get upset when something that I want done isn't done. And I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just mad that it's not done.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I feel like that's how I usually get out of seasonal depression, where I'm kind of just like, fuck it, I'm doing this. I just want it done. I want it out of my headspace so I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, I think there's kind of like a dual, like people that are, striving to create something struggle with sort of like a dual tension. It's like there's like procrastination or just, any reason that things kind of get in the way. And also, there's the knowing that I need to do something, and that kind of leads to like some degree of like stress or anxiety. But, sometimes you don't start doing the thing until you get like so upset that you're like, I want to get this thing done and, like set my to-do list on fire or set my, like put my brain away and like not have to worry about that thing. Yeah, I used to get that feeling a lot. I understand that.
I do think it's cool though how you got your start with this, where I think that's super beneficial for like prospective game designers to hear though, because I'm similar where I was telling you off, Mike. I went to college for game design. I took 2 years. I have an associate, so it was a 2-year degree, and I can't read a book about game design in theory. Like it bores me to tears. Like it's so hard for me to learn from a book that doesn't have some type of a narrative attached to it.
Yep.
So, or like some type of like I like history things, so that's always like I love video game history specifically, but so that's easier for me to latch on to. But when it's just like here's how you create a circle, a sphere, excuse me, in Maya, I'm kind of like, well, cool. I need some type of assistance with that, and it's generally in college it was the professors. It was not just the books. I had the added benefit of professors. And for you instead of reading, like you said, books didn't really click for you. But once you found tutorial videos, essentially a professor, quote unquote, in this term, I feel like it's easier to get that. It's easier to get that first step going.
Yeah, totally. And some people like honestly thrive with books, and that's fantastic. But also, just for anybody out there that has been kind of on the edge of like, I want to get into this stuff, but also I don't know. I've tried, or I've done this or done that. If you haven't tried, kind of following along with some video paths, and the thing is too that's great about this, like if you want to learn Blender, if you want to learn 3D, there's so much just free material and training out there that is just on YouTube. It's like this crazy blessing. And also too, like there's specific people, there's like some people that do like really excellent tutorials for like art or programming or whatever, and they might like release it on like a Patreon or whatever. It's like you can usually get into a bunch of that stuff and even have like somebody who might be a respondent to you with like way less of an investment than going to college or something or getting like a degree. And like that's also still super legit. Like I'm not going to knock colleges and stuff.
Oh no, it's just it's
just like people coming at this from sort of like I want to be like, right now I'm a hobbyist, but I want to be able to make something for myself and do it on the side. It can be very bite-sized, and people can get into it in like small increments.
And that's I feel like that's a good way to approach a lot of different things. For example, with my podcast, I was telling you off mic, I'm starting to interview game devs now, and that's a huge personal growth step for me because that's something I've always wanted to do, and it's kind of awesome. Like, it feels good to do, but like that took a lot of work to get to, mainly confidence, but it just took some time to get to. But like, podcasting is on the side. Like, I literally lose money from this, but
Right.
like, it's just something to do on the side. And the same for, like you were saying, with game design or making a game, you just gotta like set small goals for yourself and then kind of go from there. I actually downloaded Game Boy Studio the other
Oh,
week.
cool.
I
Yeah.
haven't tinkered with it yet, but I downloaded it because I'm like, I played someone else's game who I thought was like really good. I'm like, I want to try something like that. So I'm going to tinker with it once I get a chance, but we'll
Yeah,
see where
there's
it
so
goes.
many like fun niche little tools, and also different tools that have been coming out in the past couple of years that make it a lot easier to put your your program onto like a cart, like whether it's like an NES cart or like a Game Boy cart or something like that. And and people are actually doing that with like their release thing, where it's like the whole like repro scene is just so cool and special. And it's like it's also like hard watching that kind of stuff go by and be like, I want to do that, but also I shouldn't, because rewind the clock like 4 years, 5 years, like here I'm trying to finish Halloween Forever and I don't want to like get too distracted. It's definitely very easy to get distracted by like, this looks cool, but also you just kind of have to give it a thumbs up and appreciate that somebody else is doing it. And sort of also like it's hard, like once you get into a project that you're sort of like pushing towards some kind of release, like the finishing the process is kind of tricky. But it's something to practice too. There's a really good book, one of the boss fight books that that series. Derek Yu did one on Spelunky, and it's mostly just like a whole like a post-mortem on like the whole development of Spelunky. And but he talks a lot in a couple different venues, but like a lot in that book about sort of like the three phases of game development or a creative project or just anything that takes kind of like time to do. And there's like the sort of like the concept phase, which is where a lot of like the fun and the energy and excitement comes from. Like, and I think you'll see that like people love game jams and like little prototypes and stuff. But also the churn, the process, like the actual production phase is a different kind of terrain and a different kind of mood than the starting of the project. And I think like one thing that I've done in the past, and a lot of people will do too, is you just kind of you fall in love with starting projects, but you don't always love finishing them. And that's also okay. Like, part of it is kind of like keeping yourself in sort of like a fail fast, and not even like fail, but like a try fast mentality.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It's okay to like do these demos and do these small things and even just get it out of your system. And especially people that are doing game development and heavily focused on mechanics, that's really not where I go. Like, I'm so focused on content that I'll make the same platformer game with like minor nuances over and over again until I'm in the grave, just because I can put fun stuff in it, and put new characters and put new story into it. Like, that's where I I get very excited. But I have friends that do like very innovative, unique like concepts for gameplay and inputs and stuff, and like that stuff really thrives in the concept phase. But even like beyond like concept and beyond sort of like the iteration or just like the content churn, like shipping is like the third least practiced component that people get to do. And even also like at Working Man, another big part of this was this other game that we put together called Death State, where it was an in-house game that I got to create with it was mostly myself and my friend Matt Leffler. And it's if people like Halloween Forever, I also recommend you take a look at Death State. It's on PS4, Steam, and Switch.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah, it's honestly there's a lot of just kind of like shared just love of stuff. It's like a Lovecraftian bullet hell sort of
Is
thing.
it, what is it? It's death,
Death State, like
death, like DATE?
like DEATH state, like New York
Oh,
State or
okay.
whatever. And
I thought you were
like
saying death date. I see
oh
it.
no, yeah, Death State. And
Death state. Okay, I see it.
it's cool because Pumpkin Man is actually a playable character in that. So again, for the Halloween lovers out there, but it would like Death State happened around a similar time as Halloween Forever, and I had a lot of practice shipping
Mm-hmm.
client projects for clients, and then I was getting practice shipping IP titles and such. So it was just like a really nice time to just be doing that sort of stuff. And also sort of like the timeline of Halloween Forever, it originally was out on itch.io just in sort of like a 3-level sort of trimmed down version. It was
Mm-hmm.
and that to me was kind of like this is it's out, it's released, and I was like able to sell some copies, which was great. But I was thinking, it could be cool to put on Steam, and that's that I think there was like a year or maybe like 9 months or so between when it was out on itch.io. I think it was out on itch.io like early 2015, and then I was sort of trying to get it ready for Steam by October.
What were some of the things that you were thinking about while preparing it for Steam? Like, what were you trying to like? What were some additions you were contemplating?
Mostly it was because I think the original game was like $2.99, and I was thinking, it could be, and it was $2.99 for like 3 levels, and in like short levels too. And like in my mind, I was like, oh, it's $3 for a 3-level game. That's not too bad. I don't even know if it had unlockable characters at that point. It might have just been Pumpkin Man, and you went through like the first 3 levels of the game. But I was thinking, it could be great to just kind of layer more stuff onto it. So what wound up happening is we went from 3 levels to 5, added just more, like made the levels larger and longer in general,
Mm-hmm.
added the mini bosses. So it was kind of, how can we kind of take what we've got, but just like cram in more good stuff to it. So the game, grew a bit, and also adding like the unlockable characters, just trying to think of, being on something like Steam where there's eventually going to be, achievements and unlocks and stuff. Like what kind of stuff is, fun for people to like go and find, and, just like replay value stuff. And, also I do want to call out, my friend Rob Boston, BC
Mm-hmm.
Likes You. He did the soundtrack for the game, and it was all composed on LSDJ, which which was
Okay,
the
yeah.
Game Boy tracker.
Yes, yes.
So like very, very authentic, like the work he did. And he worked with his sister too. I can't remember her name, but I think she was like a music studies person or whatever. But the House of BC Likes You, they did a really great job. Loved all that. But yeah, it was mostly that, and also I think from the itch.io time to like when it was Steam release time, I started doing just Twitch live streaming of game dev stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been one like kind of continuous thing through just like a lot of life changing stuff. So it's been really nice to have that, and just have like it's sort of like I have like my own like little platform to just like talk to people about stuff. But I remember thinking about it, saying to myself like, oh, this would be really cool as like a marketing thing or whatever, to like show people what I do. But
It's a good idea.
but more so than that, or instead of that, or on top of that, just having Twitch is like a place to like, again, meet people, build a little bit of a community, have like some people that on the internet that kind of become like legitimate friends over time.
Yeah.
It's been kind of like an eye-opening thing for a lot of those reasons.
You could also argue that it was a good productivity tool because it gave you a scheduled time. Or like, well, I have to work on the game during these hours because this is when I stream. So you're kind of combining advertising with connection, with networking, with just friendship building, along
Exactly.
with productivity. It's a really good mix of all of them.
It's like a very it's like very blobby, feeling, but also it does a lot of good stuff. And I think like probably the biggest downside is just like sometimes you're distracted, but also if you can still like get work done and kind of thrive in that environment, and also just enjoy that you're kind of getting stuff done, but also it's relaxing.
Yeah.
Is a big perk, because me personally, or anybody that's going to be doing a lot of this stuff, it's like you have a job, or you have something that takes up your time during the day, and you're going to be doing this, in the margins of time in your life. And so having the ability to just find the place or the time or some kind of regularity with that helps a lot.
And you never want something that you enjoy doing feel like work, like you always want to make sure that if you're doing something for fun, even if it ends up being your job and your quote unquote work, you don't want it to ever feel like work. So it's always important to put yourself in a space, in an atmosphere, in a setting that is conducive for that.
It's well said though. It's like you're like everybody out there is trying to just kind of get through their daily life, and also trying to get through what it is that they want to do, like for themselves, if they if people even have like energy left over at the end of the day. So it's like sometimes you do well by creating like the right kind of space. Sometimes you do well by sort of tricking yourself into doing it, or sometimes you do well by getting mad, and then you're like are so fed up that you got to do something about it. And
you could make the argument that tricking yourself is putting yourself in the right kind of space.
It can be. Yeah. It's a kind of thing too. Like I talk to a lot of people about just, productivity and burnout, and, trying to do this kind of thing for yourself, but also it can really easily turn into something unhealthy too. Like people develop like bad work habits, or, they're going to try and, do this kind of monastic lifestyle and just focus on this thing at the expense of so many other things. And, there's, like my will to sit down and work probably diminishes during the summer, because I like want to be outside in the world. It's also like tricky in the winter, because sometimes you don't want to be doing anything. So it like there's no perfect time, but I'm always trying to like encourage people not to like be on their own. Like you don't want to be on your case for not living up to an arbitrarily assigned deadline or something, if it's
or
just
some insane expectation that you set for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing too, especially with games and sort of game development on the side. Just start with something really small and give yourself a bite-size thing to do. A lot of people want to make the next cool MMO, but don't even
do an MMO.
Yeah, don't bother. Don't even worry. Like there's so many things you could do that are just yours, and that's plenty. It's enough. And
it is. I was just gonna say it's really smart advice. When after I finished my game design career, or my game design degree, my friends and I actually started up our own little quote unquote studio, and we tried to make our own game, and we were trying to make a tower defense game, because we thought, well, that's a simple concept that we can use just as like a groundwork to get everything in. They wanted to make it in 3D. None of us are 3D artists. None
Pipeline.
of us. And it is. And we actually had a running prototype. It wasn't good. Like I wouldn't say it was a good game by any stretch, but we actually had a working prototype where you could place down towers, and there was no enemies designed yet. It was just like little squares going through, but just as placeholders. But it fell apart just because once we got that up, we're just like, well, none of us are making very like good looking 3D models. Like none of us are 3D artists, and it's not like any of us went to school for it. So unless we have the time and the dedication, which I'm not an artist, that's not something that I find to be fun to do for myself. I wish it was. And speaking of art, I love the pixel art for your game for Halloween Forever.
Yeah.
But like programming is definitely my stronger suit, and even that it takes a little bit for me to get used to. But everyone has their own strengths, So it's like they had me working on art, and I'm like, just because I was the one with the most experience with the 3D with Maya.
Yeah.
And that was not a good choice, because I wasn't good at it, and I didn't enjoy doing it. So the game kind of fell apart. So, like to your point, you want to keep your you want to keep your scope small to begin with, just so you get some type of balance and some type of footing, so that way you can use it as a jumping off point for your next most complicated thing. And
Yeah.
I hope there's no one out there no indie dev trying to make an MMO right now. One, because the market it's not the most profitable market anymore.
Yeah, it's just
two,
like the
tech
craziest
thing.
like example that people like to give. But
I feel like battle royales would be like everyone wants to make it the next battle royale.
Yeah, and I'm probably just like showing off my age or something, or just like game dev grandpa, still talking about MMOs, but I don't even.
They're still being made. They're just done differently. I think like No Man's Sky. I don't think it's an MMO, but like it's got like elements of that, like this big open world to explore and whatnot.
Yeah, and even like on the pipeline topic too. I've done plenty of 3D. I know how to do 3D, but I won't do 3D for my own projects because I just feel a lot more confident about shipping 2D stuff. Like I can do the art and program it and make it feel cohesive and people are happy with it, and that's enough for me. And I've seen other 3D projects that I've been involved in, or like kind of like ancillarily involved in, that just at the outset the conversation was, do we do 2D or 3D? And people on the team wanted to do 3D, and then the project didn't ship. And like one of the reasons is because you've got this, like you've got a huge multiplier on your engine, a huge multiplier on your asset pipeline. And like if you're trying to do games on a budget, or create games on a budget, whether it's money or time or both, you should pay attention to these things.
I would rather, and I think it makes a lot more sense now. Like pixel art is coming back in a big way. There's so many popular games. Like look at like Undertale, for example.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I've had so many people dump on, working when I worked in a studio with a bunch of gamers and game developers and stuff, and the rare chance of we have time to make something or the resources to make something. What do we want to make? And all the opinions come out, and like it makes me happy that you say it, because there's just as many people that are like, I don't like how pixel art looks and it just doesn't do anything for me, or like other people saying only all of the indie games that are worth a sneeze now are 3D, and people have these kind of there's like an emotional response opinion to this, and I'm just comfortable knowing that within myself, like it'd be one thing if it's one thing if like pixel art is having a renaissance, if pixel art is popular or winning an Emmy or whatever, that's great. But like I'll still be making it because
That's
my
what you
sweet
like.
spot, yeah, exactly. My sweet spot is I want to make stuff that looks like something that I would have discovered when I was a kid, and it made me say, wow, like that's cool. Or there's like this kind of also like fun, just like it's great that people kind of pay attention to retro specs and stuff, and Halloween Forever isn't that necessarily. It looks kind of, I think the original art, I was kind of getting inspired by some like ZX Spectrum sprites, but I didn't follow those rules or anything. It's just I kind of liked like the high contrast, low color use sprites, because they were easier to produce, and also while I could just kind of churn out art and make it look fun and very silhouette based, and then try and give myself a nightmare learning to program like some crazy system that I needed because of the game. So it was very much like a let me do this so I can have more time to do that. And I feel more comfortable with the next game or games that we're doing, that we can go a little bit more advanced with the art, but still it'll be like Super Nintendo Genesis era stuff probably.
What would you say is your inspiration for Halloween Forever? Like, what games did you kind of use as its predecessors? What was it inspired by? That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, even less games, but Halloween 3, Season of the Witch,
Okay.
sort of like the black.
That was in the credits at the end.
Yeah, it's like the black sheep of like the Halloween franchise, because nobody liked it because I guess like John Carpenter wanted to turn it into like a anthology thing where people liked. I'm gonna mess things up, but I'm pretty sure Halloween is Mike Myers. I've seen Halloween 3 over and over and over again. I haven't seen Halloween 1 and 2. nearly as much or at all. But just because when I was a kid, yeah, this is the thing. When I was a kid, I like walked in to like a room with a TV that was playing the transformation scene from Halloween 3. There's like I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there's I'll like it's not really a spoiler, but there are these like crazy Halloween masks that are getting sold, and they have like a little chip of like Stonehenge inside of them, and if you watch this commercial, it turns your body into like snakes and like spiders and kills you or whatever, because like whatever, I don't want to say anything else.
That's fine.
There's like the scene where there's a kid and his parents in this, kind of like green room, screening room, and the kid's wearing one of the masks because it's a cool pumpkin mask, and he watches this commercial, sort of like a focus group thing, and his face just rots and like turns into like boa constrictors and like crickets and stuff. And and I remember seeing that when I was a kid, and just like, my eyeballs fell out of my head, but also I didn't know what it was. And I would be like searching for it for years. Like, what is that movie? And I didn't realize it was a Halloween movie, because I just thought, Halloween stuff is all
Mike Myers.
Mike Myers. And I'm like, what is this like weird third movie? And it wasn't until like I was, watching a bunch of horror movies when I was older that I eventually found it. But that's like the reason why like the original 3 characters for Halloween Forever is Pumpkin Man, a skeleton, and Ms. Witch is like the 3 silver shamrock masks.
Okay.
But that was like the big inspiration there. But it's like, mechanically it plays kind of like, it's like a very simple like run and gun. I've always loved Mega Man games. Mm-hmm. It's not as complicated as like a Contra, but you could maybe like, it's just it's a very kind of like boiled down, distilled, platformer love letter to a lot of the stuff, and just, Halloween stuff and spooky stuff. Like there's like a silly, vague story,
I didn't want to, because I actually got a vibe from a different game that you didn't mention. I just didn't want to say it. I wanted to hear directly from you what your direct ones were. I got a very Ghost and Goblins vibe to it, just because. Yeah. But it's a very fair Ghost and Goblins versus what that game was.
Well, you can like change your jump direction mid jump, which is, a big help for that.
Yes.
Like you're not like,
it was
which is actually like.
The projectiles remind me, like the way that you kind of hurl projectiles out of your mouth kind of reminded me of how he throws them in Ghost and Goblin. And obviously the whole aesthetic of the game, the horror aesthetic, is very reminiscent of that, but much more, like you went much more into the horror aesthetic. They kind of stayed in the medieval area.
Yeah, I had Super Ghouls and Ghosts when I was a kid, and I was terrible at it.
It's a tough game. You weren't terrible at it. The game
exactly
the game's just hard.
But like I was thinking about some of the projectiles that you can do, or like the firing patterns. Like I remembered when I was doing like the lob that Pumpkin Man spits the bullet, and it kind of just falls out of his mouth a couple tiles away. Like that, I was thinking about like the torch throw, when you have like the torch weapon and it kind of does like the arc and such. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a deliberate kind of doink that pops out. But I really like the whole aesthetics of like Ghouls and Ghosts and Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Like the Capcom designs have always been really, really special as far as like what kind of comes from there. So there's definitely some of that in there too.
I can kind of see a little bit of the Mega Man influence you mentioned, just in like your pixel art for Pumpkin Man, just because Pumpkin Man, right? Just want to make sure So I've played through the game twice now. Actually, I think almost 3 times. And I found who I don't remember, because there's 9 characters at the player. No, 10 characters. How many? 8 or 10? How many? I forget how many.
We've added more. Like we added the last 4 for the there was like a PS4 update, and also for like the Switch release. So it's it's the roster's gotten kind of big.
You know what? I'm just going to bring it up right now.
That's okay. Yeah. And this is like classic me too. Like I don't know I can't remember the names of the bosses or the like how many characters are in the stinking game. But
well, the reason I asked, because I loved that all the characters had something unique. Some of them, admittedly, I did see they were a little bit like just more reskins, but like
Yeah,
I
there's a
love,
couple that are just flavor
yeah,
additions and
like
stuff. Yeah.
Santa Pumpkin. It just seems like Well, he actually shoots really fast, though. I noticed Santa Pumpkin shoots crazy fast.
Does he shoot
But
faster? That's funny.
I think he does. Maybe it was just my perception of it. You would
It
have
could be.
You would
That's
know better
cool.
than I would. But I beat the game with Butternut Bro.
Yeah.
'Cause
Butternut Bro he's like a big favorite because his exploding butternut squashes are kind of broken, but in like a fun way.
Yes.
I think sometimes they even hit twice depending on, just like the way that like the damage is calculated with like my like Swiss cheese, scripting and stuff. But yeah, Butternut Bro is good. So like Pumpkin Man is kind of tough to play the game as, but also you can unlock Butternut Bro pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then he's sort of like a difficulty check.
So there's 12 total characters that you have now. You have Pumpkin Man, Santa Pumpkin, Butternut Bro, Grizzle Dude. There's 2 I have not unlocked. One's with a chainsaw, but Skeleton, Miss Witch, Protagonist. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah.
Harmonia, Ray, and then the last one I have, which is Miss Succubus. Miss Succubus is my favorite because she can fly.
Yeah. I don't want to say anything, but yeah, Miss Succubus is cool. Oh, I will say there's another character that you can unlock that's an Easter egg for an upcoming game that we're working on. But since you haven't unlocked it, I don't want to name his name. But that's a game that we're working on, which is again, it's going to be a platformer, more Metroidvania in scope.
Okay.
But,
I'm down for that. I love Metroidvanias.
yeah, that one's called Abixis. We're still it's been a lot longer in the oven, and it's probably going to be in the oven a little bit just because just like life keeps happening and such.
Metroidvanias are fairly complex, I feel like, in design.
Yeah, it's definitely it's sort of like an iterative thing, and yeah, it's just kind of like it'll be ready when it's ready, and it'll be nice to like get to do all this over again and have another phone call and talk about that.
Dude, I'd love to have you on to talk about whatever the next game is, because I actually recognize it because I forget where I saw it. It's called Axis? How do you
Abixis, yeah.
You mentioned it in the game. It was listed in some of there's like these burning scrolls that hover, and I got one of them. I don't think I got all of them because I got the 6 runes that give you the secret ending. And then I don't think I got all those scrolls. But for those who have not played the game, we're kind of talking about it nebulously and kind of grabbing here and there. It is, at its core, it's a platformer shooter. It's like very Mega Man-esque, like you said. One thing I want to compliment right off the bat, we're 40 minutes in, so it's not really right off the bat, but one thing I want to compliment, though, is your controls, because one thing that it's tough for me with platforming games, or if the controls are bad, then it kind of ruins. I mean, it makes sense because platforming games, the whole purpose of it is controls. But if a game feels too floaty or if it feels off, it just, even if it's not reliant on your twitch reflexes or like your shooting abilities, it just makes it so it doesn't make it fun to play at all. And I'm talking about the Switch port specifically because that's what I played it on. But even playing with the joystick, like most times you want to play platformers with a D-pad, it feels fantastic with the joystick.
That's good. People have brought that up to me a couple times, and I think it's probably just like a happy accident of just trying to make it feel good, but also it's there's I'm trying to think of if I spent sleepless nights trying to like make it refined or too perfect or whatever, I'm just glad that it does kind of feel what it should feel like and is responsive. But yeah.
What types of changes were made over the course of development? Was there anything that like what are some of the aspects of the game that changed the most from the start of you developing it to the end? And I understand you had essentially a couple different endpoints, because you had the first endpoint which was itch.io or on itch, and then you had the second endpoint on Steam. So I guess let's kind of talk about like the big changes that were made from the itch version to the Steam version.
Yeah, I guess so. The big changes were it was mostly just content. So going from like the 3 worlds to the 5 worlds, and just a ton more bosses, and getting more kind of characters, and like the different endings in there, and like achievements and such. I would say too, like probably additional endpoints, because from like the Steam version, which was mostly like work that I did, and then there was some, I think additional stuff that I did afterwards. I think I added in like support, better support for like control remapping. I had a couple people in the community that were, I was kind of talking with them and chatting with them about sort of accessibility concerns. We tried to do some stuff to like make it so that you could just set like keyboard controls up however you wanted. Various degrees of successful or unsuccessful gamepad support. But a lot of that improved because after the timeline of Halloween Forever, and like I guess how we're getting to where we are today is it was on Steam for a bit of time, and then I never really imagined I'd have time or the wherewithal to do console ports of it.
Yeah.
But I think what really, what not even helped. What really did that was getting in touch with Poppyworks. This guy Wolfgang Wozniak, who his specialty was, and I think it still is, but also he does like kind of like a broader net of projects, is or was like what the time we met was helping people that are game maker developers port their stuff to different consoles, because one of the downsides of game maker is that it's very easy to publish stuff to Steam, or it's very easy to publish just an exe, but when you get into just the licensing for console versions, the cost goes up a bit, because they do it on like a software as a service model, so you have to like time it, and and also just I want to, me personally, I want to make new stuff. I want to focus on content and making something new that I enjoy. I was less interested personally in trying to like tick off all the boxes, but I remember it was before Game Maker Studio 2 came out, and I remember just kind of looking around on Twitter, and I saw a tweet by Poppyworks saying, if there's anybody out there with a Studio 1.4 project that they want to, consider bringing to consoles, hit me up, because it's going to be easier now to do it than later. And we just started direct messaging and like chatting a little bit, and we're like, let's try it. Okay. Kind of like shrugging the shoulders, and like, what's there to lose? Mm-hmm. And, some contracts later, I did a little bit of work to sort of support that effort, mostly when, just if there was something that he was like, where's the thing? Or we'd kind of like pass things back and forth. But the majority of the work was done by Poppyworks. And also there was like the content update we did to kind of gear up for the PS4 update, and also what the version that's out on Switch nowadays, or starting today. So I spent a little bit of work over last summer, but mostly it really is just like a huge credit to Poppyworks for doing a ton of legwork, and for a game that had already been launched on Steam and already been published, essentially self-published, they just did a lot to get things moving and sort of like generate interest. And I feel like a lot of people talk about game development and release cycles, mm-hmm. is sort of people used to talk about like the like the Brontosaurus model or whatever. It's like where you'd have like your release sales, which is like the head and the neck, and then it kind of tapers down to like the long tail. And a lot of people also, I think more recently, and I might be out of the loop a little bit, but people will talk about sort of like the Stegosaurus model, where you have one release, then another release, then another release. And I'm moving my hand up and down again to like show like the spikes on the back or whatever.
That makes sense. That's kind of how I feel like a lot of even AAA studios are doing it. Like, look at Animal Crossing, for example, New Horizons. They have that giant release, and then every time there's an update, there's another little tick where maybe people who didn't buy the game were like, oh, there's an update, maybe that game's still a thing. It's just keeping the game in the public's consciousness, in the zeitgeist.
And I feel like I was... exactly. And I was in sort of like, I kind of just fell into the practice of doing that with just the Steam version too, because there were, things I needed to fix. And also, like, as I was fixing stuff, it was like, let's add another character, or let's do something or this or that. And it gave people like reasons to come back, which, and also, it, like, we didn't really do any DLC that cost anything. We did eventually raise the price because when it launched on Steam, at that point it was $4.99. And then when we were getting I think when we did the PS4 update that happened earlier, or happened in 2020, that was going to be the version that would make it onto the Switch. Wolfgang and I talked a little bit, and we thought, should we raise the price because we're adding all these characters, and at this point, it's, the game is kind of gone past, $5 land, and now maybe we're in like $10 town. So we talked about it, and we said, like, let's give it a try, and we've added a lot of, content just as free updates over the years. So I didn't really expect it to be a living project that much, but it really has been. And it's that's like another thing too, like when people that kind of get into like this stuff and they sort of say, I can't release it because I'm a perfectionist and this has to be super perfect or whatever. Like you can kind of do it in like an iterative sense. And also too, if you have people that buy your game or get into it, and it's easier to do patches and updates on Steam or on like PC before you start getting into consoles. But there is a degree of goodwill, as long, I mean, you don't want to ship shovelware, you don't want to ship just broken projects or like empty container files. But people that get to see that a project is, or a game is like a living thing, and they're getting updates, or they're getting something, I think there's a degree of goodwill that comes with that, and it's for me it's a good feel, and I'm happy that we could have like an update, the game pops up in somebody's library again, and they see cool, what's new, and there's something for them to go find or a new character to unlock, like that kind of thing. It just feels good.
And I think it was the way you kind of had that change from the itch version to the Steam version, the different things you added, like it was all for the better, at least in my opinion, based off what, now I didn't experience the version that was on itch, but like at least with this one, I really loved the old school aesthetic where like if you lose all your lives, then you're starting back at the beginning of the game. And
right.
But what I like, though, is that you added different modes into it where, like, you could get the 99 lives, like the Contra code, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I actually used the 99 lives code to beat it the first time just because I wanted to make sure I had it finished in time for when we spoke. But since then,
definitely.
But since then, I've beat it without it, mainly because Miss Succubus is, like, broken in a great way. It's so fun.
Yeah, she's strong. And the flying characters are very strong.
Well, cool. What I like though is that like her attack isn't quite as powerful as say like Butternut Bro, but the fact that she can fly, her mobility kind of makes up for it. But in any case, I liked how the structure was where the mini bosses, like all the bosses you have in there, felt super unique. They didn't really feel too different. I also felt I'm bad at picking up boss patterns, and I was able to pick up the boss patterns. It didn't make it easy, but it made it like, okay, I know what I need to do here. And that was super rewarding for me because I love the Mega Man games as well. I can't for the life of me understand their boss patterns. I don't know what it is. It's just, it feels so, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. There's a word that I was trying to think of. It's, something that's...
No, it's okay. All the English teachers are having a good time right now.
Esoteric. There we go.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's cool.
But like, and they weren't. It's just I'm bad at it. But like this, I enjoyed the level structure. And how did you approach designing bosses in this game? Did you take inspiration from other games, or were you trying to like look at other games and be like, okay, well, I hate bosses that do this, so let me try to fix it or something?
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily kind of like an improvement thing. I think for the most part, it would probably start with a sketch. I think the nice thing about like the boss design and sort of setting up like this different states and the like the patterns that they go through. It's one of the things I enjoy the most out of programming is like this kind of, set piece content that is going to do different things, and you've got to kind of get out of the way or get with the program a little bit. It's just fun because it's like a self-contained instance, compared to like, other like, enemy AI that is like they're just kind of walking around, or you want something that's going to do something in response to you. But it's like you can take a lot of those things and sort of roll it up and create, hazards and different things too, like stuff that's it was fun to sort of say like, all right, we're gonna have pits with like kill spikes in here, like that makes things more difficult, figuring that sort of stuff out. But usually like the boss design process would start on paper with like a sketch or a doodle, and I just sort of kind of just think about like, okay, cool, if they're over here, they're going to move around to over there, or like, are they going to fly, are they going to shoot this or that? I would usually sort of kind of design it in thumbnails, just in like a sketchbook, and then try to like just build it iteratively and sort of just build it and play. I think that was like John Romero said a bunch of times, like it's better to do like, don't design too much on paper before you just start actually building something and prototyping it. And I kind of agree that you don't want to spend too much time in process or too much time in planning before getting your hands into it. And then you can still take it back to like the page, or take it back to like the dry erase board or what have you, or the sketches, but having play and try it, like build it and try it, and giving yourself, and like that's another thing that's great about Game Maker is it's very easy to just kind of like throw instances in a room and be like, all right, I'm playing this portion of the game, and here we go, let's see what happens. But
I might actually look into Game Maker Studio just to give it a shot as well. Like that seems really cool. And it's 30% off right now, Game Maker Studio 2.
I think they've got something like the Lunar New Year sale or something. So
oh, that's awesome.
Little sales pitch, no referral code. Just jump in there. It's good.
When you design a level, how much of like does it start with you coming up with the aesthetic of the level? Like because you said before you started you went to college for art, correct? Like graphic design and whatnot. So do you start with the art first, or how exactly do you begin designing a level?
Yeah, definitely, probably like similar, like kind of sketching stuff out and trying to think. With Halloween Forever, there's different locations you go through. You're kind of exploring like haunted woods or a graveyard, or like a haunted manor house, or old castles and things. And a lot of the settings in Halloween Forever, you wind up kind of going through like an outdoor sequence into sort of a structure, and then kind of making a lot of the outdoor stuff is similar, but then like once you get inside the structure, then they're a little bit more tuned into like a color key.
Okay.
Like that's another thing too, as far as if you're going to go through like 3 different castles in your game, like make them look distinct in a way, like give them different colored walls, and also like trying to theme enemies around things, so there's like, again, sort of like some cohesiveness, like the church level, and I'm like, I can't even remember like the name that I named it in the game, but like maybe the spooky church or something. But there are all these frogs everywhere.
Oh, I know exactly the level you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, my friend Dan, I remember I was like working on the tile set for it on Twitch, and just like all these kind of weird, just like old cathedral walls and like stained glass stuff, and like a bunch of weird crucifixes all over.
Yeah.
And he was like, wouldn't it be cool if the church was just full of frog people? And I was like, yes, that would actually be really cool. And they're like, they're just like sleeping in chairs, and it's just like weird kind of, swamp church that got overrun by frog people. And I was like, it's kind of perfect, and it's there's other enemies that kind of creep in, there's, probably a bat in every level, like certain stuff is just kind of perennial. You just see it all over the place, but that's like fun for me, as far as, even like one of the things I really like in making games and outside of making games is sort of like system design stuff. So like, what is this whole, package of of elements going to be, and how do we kind of try to make it cohere.
I getcha. Now, we've talked a lot about your design approach to the game itself. What was your approach to designing the art? Like, did you know you wanted that Halloween aesthetic in mind? You mentioned Halloween 3. Was that like your base point for all of your art, that movie?
Yeah, in a way, and it was more like kind of like a weird feeling of an inspiration, but like we don't have like there isn't like a Tom Atkins character like trucking around, or it's not like a fan game, really. Just I think it was more just Halloween 3 is kind of this receptacle of just ideas and themes and just mishmash of stuff that I've always enjoyed, and I thought, this would be great for a game, or not even necessarily like this will be great for a game as far as like this is the idea for everything going into it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much kind of something that I like added to over time, and I didn't necessarily have like a clear picture of where it was going at the end when I started, but that's usually just how I wind up doing stuff anyway. Like I used to do webcomics, and I would maybe have an idea of like where I want to go, but not like necessarily how I'm going to get there until I get there.
Okay.
And it also feels like similar to like Dungeons and Dragons, or like running a game for people. It's like you don't want to be too attached to like how you're going to do things, because something is going to change it, whether it's just player interest, or you're trying to figure out what happens. Like something comes in and then it causes you to go off in a different direction.
Now, in terms of the music, how much you said that you had someone else do the music for it, and he did it all on, what was his name again? I'm sorry. He did it all on LSDJ.
Robert Moston. He also goes by BC Likes You.
Okay.
Yeah, he composed it all in LSDJ.
How much input or how much direction did you give him for the music? Was it kind of like make it seem spooky, or was it more kind of like, this is the game I'm making, you do what you do?
Yeah, we would talk about, sort of here's the level at hand, here's kind of the content that happens in there, there's frogs or something. But usually if I had like an idea in mind, or something that some music, usually like when I'm working with composers, I'll try to say, here's what we like need to make the thing for. Here's some stuff that it would be fun to like take some inspiration from, or like, it'd be cool. Like it'd be cool if we had, this movie soundtrack, but it was like techno, or just something like that, or like let's do a level theme like as a waltz or something. And also here's like something that I get really excited about when I hear it. And I try not to leave composers in the dark too much. And I feel like I haven't really had like Rob is really great to work with, and we would kind of just like listen to what he would have and just sort of like poke and nudge stuff a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I'm not like a music person, but I at least like with his help, or like with the help of like a good composer, you can kind of say like, what's this part? Can this be different? Or what, like, I like this about that. And, maybe we tweak these things, but yeah, he was a great collaborator, and I feel like we had a pretty good time kind of going back and forth.
The music was something for me, just to be completely honest, that actually it needed to grow on me, because at first it felt a little it felt a little repetitive, but as I got to play it more, it ended up getting stuck in my head. So it was interesting for me from the player side, where it was like, at first I was like, it did start to grate on me a little bit, but as I kept playing, like, I legit still want to keep playing the game, even though I already beat it twice, and I've done all that's left to do is find those last two characters, but I seldom want to do that. It was interesting for me to have that kind of slow rise in terms of how much I like the music. It's good. It's really good. It took a little bit. But anyway, so I don't really have much else for you in terms of questions about the game, but I guess for the listeners out there, if you have not heard of Halloween Forever, go check it out, especially if you like 2D side-scrolling platformers that have a Mega Man shooting mechanic, kind of like you can play as a bunch of different characters, and they all have unique abilities. It's definitely worth your while, and I'm not just saying that because I have the developer here with me. I really did enjoy the game, and like I was saying before, the game just hooked me, and I actually still want to go play it. with all that said, though, I have one final question for you, Peter, and it's not related to the game at all. This is a segment that I've been doing on and off because sometimes I forget to ask my wife, but I have a question from Courtney. Courtney is my wife, and
Nice.
I always just ask her, like, what's a question you want me to ask? And it might not have anything to do with the game. So the question she had for this one was, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, what was the job you wanted when you were a kid?
I think for a while I wanted to be a paleontologist,
Okay.
and that didn't work out. And I think then I wanted to be, like an animator for a period of time. That sort of worked out, but in a weird way. But yeah.
Hey, but you animating in video games now, it counts.
Yep. Drawing cartoons and looking at bones is where
You
I'm at.
kind of combined the two with this horror element, if you think about it.
I guess I got lucky.
But all right, man. Well, that is all I had for you for today. So, Peter, where can the good people find you online? Any social media you want to plug, and anything you would like to plug? Obviously, Halloween Forever out now on Nintendo Switch, but you can also get it. Hold on, I actually brought this up because I wanted to make sure. You can also get it on PlayStation 4, Windows, Linux, PlayStation Vita, and Macintosh, and obviously now on Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the chance to be able to kind of sit down and talk. I do really want to thank Robert Mostin for the music, doing that. Poppyworks, Wolfgang, all the support, since we started. Let me see. Yeah, everything he did to help with that was amazing. Chew High Labs for helping us get the Switch version out the door. Pretty, really great support from some awesome people. And I'm hoping, anybody, if you're curious about the kind of stuff that we're doing, want to see anything that we're working on now, or just want to come hang out, twitch.tv/imaginary monsters is a pretty decent spot for that. Imaginarymonsters.com also has, some outdated information, but some it's where stuff gets posted intermittently. And also just my Twitter is just Peter Lazarski, so you can kind of bother me on there.
All right. I also want to give a quick shout out to Chew High Labs because they kind of set this all up and sent me the game to check out. So thank you, Chew High Labs. And as for me, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. You can also reach out to me, stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. You can also go to my website, stillloadingpodcast.com. There's a contact section there, as well as links to social media, and I did actually write a blog there for a while, but I have discontinued that because it was just too much work. If you want to support the show, you can do it in a number of ways. You can go to patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help. Even better yet, you could give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. That helps more people find the show. And finally, the most important shout out I have is the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of children receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So go check out bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Peter, thank you once again for joining me. This was a pleasure to get to know you and also to learn about the development of Halloween Forever.
Yeah, I hope we can do this again sometime.
Definitely, man. I'll have to have you on, even if it's not for one of your games. Maybe just there's another game that you like to talk about. I love just doing deep dives into games, so it would be fun to do.
We do Peter's candy corn reviews.
That would be pretty good, actually. I kind of like that, actually. Anyway, all right. That will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you all next time.